Yo, call me in deep the way I got a W. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Games Kids. Today, and only today, we are here to talk about IDW Sonic being officially canon. Now, it technically was confirmed before. You know, we had some hints of it in Sonic Frontiers, but I wanted to have like more of a firm conversation about it. You know, what does it imply for the games? What they can take away from it? What are the good and the bad challenging aspects of converging those two worlds together, and just everything that comes with it. And if you're enjoying this and the content and everything, please consider subscribing. I want to hit 50K by the end of the summer, even 100K by the end of the year. I'm fucking crazy. Now, obviously, if you're watching this video, you probably know what it is, but just to initiate some people very quickly, IDW is a company that makes the official Sonic comic books. Back in the day, it used to be Archie, but around 2017 era where Force started, IDW took over and they started creating their own Sonic comics that at the time felt like it was its own continuity. You know, it took place during the events of Sonic Forces. It gave its perspective on it and then moved on to do its own arcs and stories, you know, such like the Metal Virus arc. They introduced new characters in there. They have Surge and Kid battles in there. There's a bunch of cool different storylines that take place in IDW. There's even one with Metal Sonic in there. Like, they do a lot of cool shit in IDW, and it was running its own course for a long time, right? And then comes Sonic Frontiers, right? And not just Sonic Frontiers, but the writer from IDW being Ian Flynn. Now, a lot of people for years were preaching about how IDW Sonic's writing was so good. You know, it was very in line with the characters. You got a lot of that's sort of how you were getting the best look at the side characters for a long time. You know, they were getting their own moments, their own fights and everything, and it felt like what was going on in the comics was much better than what was going on in the current state of the video games. So obviously, when Sonic Frontiers is announced to have Ian Flynn on board with the writing, everyone gets so excited. You know, it really means you got someone who understands these characters and cares about these characters under the wing in there. Now, I know Sega actually gave him the story for Frontiers, you know, and they just told him, hey, like, write things around this story that we've given you. But still, you know, the creative writing and styling is from him, and all that is, it's very important to note, because again, they probably want to make those characters as similar as possible. So it's felt like it's lingered a bit for a while that IDW Sonic stories were canon, but we got officially more confirmation of that. There was a recent Sonic stream where they reiterated that and said, yes, IDW Sonic is canon. I can play the clip really quickly for you.
I saw one question in there. Is IDW canon? It is canon. It does take place right after Forces.
And also in Sonic Frontiers, we had Sonic mention Tangle, who is a character that has exclusively been in IDW. And the most we've had of IDW characters, aside from that, is in Sonic Forces Speed Battle, which is the mobile game. And it has, you know, characters like Whisper. It's got Tangle in there. It's been leaked actually recently that Surge is going to be in the game. So a lot of cool stuff going on with IDW. Now, it comes with the comics being canon, right? It comes with its own benefits and challenges, right? And one of the benefits I wanted to talk about was obviously, you know, the writing style, right? Where I feel like, you know, when you have the writer from the comics writing for the games, you obviously have, you know, similar narrative styles to how the characters are written. You know, obviously, when it comes to Sonic especially, there is a lot of debate and conversation around how he acts, right? In fact, within IDW, people argue a lot about his characterization. You know, there's moments where Sonic is, you know, on site to get rid of an enemy, and then there's moments with like Eggman where he's just like, I believe, you know, in second and third chances to give this guy a pass, right? And I feel like people argue about that a lot, right? About how Sonic is written differently. And my argument is, I think that's just a challenge that Sonic is gonna have to face its entire life, because Sonic is this weird in-between character where, yes, he is a mascot character. He's a mascot like a Mario, like a Pac-Man or a Mickey, right? But the difference between him and them is that he has a narrative around him, you know? But like, you cannot kill Dr. Eggman. You know, Eggman is like the Bowser of the Sonic series. You can't get rid of a character like that. You know, he's always going to loom, right? So even if that presents a different mindset than what Sonic believes how to take care of an enemy, you know, I think that's just a challenge they're gonna have to face with that particular character no matter what, you know? So if people are arguing about different writing stylings for Sonic and how he treats his enemies and they almost favoritism or specific writing for when or when not Sonic wants to act on it. I feel like it's always going to be a bit of a challenge of how they handle it. Now, my opinion, if you really want to get down to it, is like, I believe Sonic, I think when an enemy is presented as pure evil, right, it should be like, he takes care of it. I think those characters are the ones Sonic does not care for and will just get rid of, right? But I feel like when Sonic sees a sign of life in a character, kind of like he does for Metal Sonic, or kind of how he does for Eggman, or Surge and Kit from IDW, or even Sage, right, when she's presented as a villain, he is always going to give them that sort of chance and do, the shonen anime protag thing of like, hey, maybe there's a world, where this can work. Now, something awesome I'd like to talk about right now, IDW being canon, is the storylines, right? I would love to see storylines from IDW adapted into the games, because obviously, right, I don't think it's going to be the other way around. You're not just going to see, those stories and things be mentioned in the games with no comic, reference or idea, because remember, the comics are such a niche, that like if you showed a picture of Surge to a fucking casual gamer, they think this is some DeviantArt OC. You can't, like, these characters need to be presented and introduced in the games, or you adapt the stories in those games, in those comic stories, to the games. I would love to see the Metal Virus arc, which is known as the best IDW Sonic arc, adapted into the games, because it's an arc where basically it's a zombie arc. Sonic gets infected, others are getting infected, the gang is fighting for their life, for their friends and everything, and it's one of the best story narratives that goes on in Sonic. Even though we kind of had something similar to that in Frontiers with, the whole island corrupting Sonic, I feel like it's a little different this time around because it really involved everybody. But I would love to see a storyline like that adapted in the games. I would love to see a story, like the Neo Metal Sonic arc that was early on in the comics into there. Like, I just want to see those narratives from the comics, put into the games because they're so cool and interesting. Another thing that presents itself are the characters, right? People love the IDW characters, right? There's Lanolin, there's Tangled, there's Whisper, there's Surge, there's Kid, there's what the fuck is it? The duck guy, who's a really cool guy. There's a lot of cool characters in there, villains and main characters that are in there that are new, and people wonder, like, how do you introduce these characters? Well, I think the way you just do it is you kind of just do it. I don't think you have to, tell me, you don't have to, like, give me, like, a whole backstory for the character. You can just introduce them, give them a bit of, obviously, like, a description in the game or a flashback or something of how they met. But I don't think it's that big of an issue if, like, the next Sonic game, Sonic went back to a base and said, hey, Whisper, what's going on? And like, they explain, Whisper's character is something with an intro cutscene, because these characters are so interesting. I mean, especially when you get into Whisper. Like, Whisper, had a squad that, used to be part of her life, and they all died. This puppet girl was created by Eggman, who's really cool. You've got Surge and Kid, again, who are just meant to be, a weird created version of Sonic, and Tails that have their own writing stylings. It's like, there is so many cool characters to be grabbed from IDW. And again, we know these characters are officially there because, again, Sonic mentions Tangle, who is another character, Tangle the Lemur, in Sonic Frontiers. So they're there. It's just a matter of, will the games take that risk and take that leap to introduce them, or is it going to stay in a sense of like, yeah, it's canon, but it's like doing its own thing? Because, yeah, again, the reality is barely anyone reads comics. If you look in the grand scheme of Sonic, the comics are for the hardcore, and like, those people are not the same people that are gonna be, like no one is expecting the comic book characters except people that read IDW Sonic, which is a small piece. But it'd be so cool if those characters get introduced, because why just create new characters left and right in the games if you've got these characters that could be introduced that are so fun and so cool, and like, so they feel like they're part of the gang. Like, if you read those comics, those new characters feel like they're part of the gang. I highly suggest you read them if you care about Sonic, because even me, I wasn't reading IDW for years, until, a year, I think it was a year ago now, people were like, Fidelity, like, you gotta hop on, man. Then I just went on a binge. I was like, this is awesome. This is really some of the best character writing for these characters I've seen in a long time. It's definitely something you just have to balance, right? You can't just have like narratives going from one thing to another, because again, you're not gonna get people to read the comics. So I just think the best thing to do is to take stories from the comics, adapt them to the games, bring those characters from the comics, adapt them the same way Marvel movies are adapting comics that, barely anyone is reading nowadays. I feel like that's just the way to go about it. it, right? But I also understand the canon thing, right? Because like think about comic books, right? Not every comic book is canon. There are storylines that are canon, you know, but intertwining all of them doesn't always make sense, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to have people be like, oh, I got to keep up with the comic to understand the game. However, though, there is definitely a world where I could see it just being like, you know, yeah, the comics are canon, right? But they're not never gonna be like brought up in the games, you know, that, and I feel like that is a possible reality. I feel like there's a world where that's the case, but I just feel like it's such a missed opportunity if they do that, you know, because I just feel like they're doing so many cool storylines and interesting things in the games now and the comics that, yeah, they don't have to be intertwined together, but I would at least love if, you know, those comic stories were put into the games where the majority of people can experience them, and again, that way these characters can grow, and then again, it's that marketing cycle, right? Like I don't want to, you know, just always have those same characters in the Sonic spotlight. I feel like Sage was such a breath of fresh air in the games, right? Because it felt like, wow, a new original Sonic character that people really like, and I think just want to be a mainstay now. Whereas, you know, you look at Zaz or the Sinister Six or sorry, the Deadly Six or whatever you want to call them, and characters that have been added over the years in the games, and you're just like, whatever, man, right? So I feel like having characters like Sage, having characters like Whisper, and they're like Tangle, like bringing in this new cast, this modern cast of characters that would be so refreshing to the series, the same way Blaze was back in the day, the same way Silver was back in the day, just would be so fun and so cool. But yeah, there's just been a lot of debate and conversation about IDW being canon and Sonic's involvement with it and all this stuff and how things are going to change and shift or not, and I felt like I just wanted to address it, give my thoughts on it, and let me know, guys, what you think, right? What do you want from IDW? Do you want that stuff to stay far apart from the games? Do you want it intertwined? Do you want the stories adapted? What do you want? Of course, guys, let me know. Thank you all for watching, and of course, I'll see you all next time. Peace out.